Итак, друзья, всем привет! Мы рады вас видеть на финале 11-го сезона M&A Case Competition от IB-клуба МГУ. Меня зовут Телепнева Дарья, я являюсь членом команды IB-клуба, и сегодня я буду вести это мероприятие. В первую очередь мы хотим выразить благодарность экономическому факультету МГУ и, в частности, отдельное спасибо Ирине Владимировне Никитушкиной, при поддержке которой проходит вся наша работа. Спасибо большое. IB-клуб – это комьюнити студентов и профессиональных инвестбанкиров, которые хотят общаться между собой, делиться своими знаниями и опытом, а также помогать в вопросах трудоустройства в эту очень интересную, но такую непростую сферу. Мероприятия IB-клуба в целом делятся на два типа мероприятий. Это открытые лекции, воркшопы, в которых могут принять участие все желающие. Информацию о таких мероприятиях мы публикуем в нашей группе ВКонтакте. Следите за новостями, регистрируйтесь, принимайте участие, мы будем очень рады вас всех видеть. M&A Case Competition – это второй тип нашей активности. Это полноценная образовательная программа. Мы проводим ее каждый год. Отбор начинается осенью, после чего студенты до марта-апреля проходят обучение. Наша идея – это обучить навыкам финансового моделирования, анализа индустрии, подготовки презентаций и публичных выступлений. Ну, естественно, это все делается с целью дальнейшего трудоустройства в IB-сферу. Кроме посещения лекций, студенты параллельно готовят решение кейса. В этом году таргет компании являлась Русагро, одна из крупнейших компаний России на агрорынке, а легенда кейса звучала следующим образом. Контрольный акционер хочет отойти от активного управления бизнесом, снизив свою долю до миноритарной или полностью выйдя из актива. В результате он хочет получить как минимум $200 миллионов денежными средствами. Сегодня студенты представят результаты своего решения, которое они так долго готовили. И, наверное, последняя, но очень важная часть нашего выступления. Я хочу представить судей, которые будут сегодня оценивать результаты работы ребят. Это Алексей Лозовой, директор Сбербанк Merchant Banking, Дмитрий Мусатов, партнер Valuation КПМГ, и Станислав Красов, вице-президент ВТБ Капитал Global Banking. Спасибо большое, что нашли время и желание поучаствовать в этом мероприятии. Мы надеемся, что вам будет очень интересно и познавательно. В целом мы сейчас можем начинать. Ребята, первая команда Inception. Можете загружать свою презентацию, настраивать демонстрацию экрана. Я подожду, пока у вас все будет работать. На выступление отводится 10 минут. За минуту до окончания вашего времени я пишу в чат, что у вас осталась 1 минута, после чего вы заканчиваете, и начинается Q&A-сессия. Скажите, когда будете готовы, я поставлю таймер.
Так, окей. А видно мою презентацию?
Да, все хорошо.
Так, ребята, готовы начинать?
Готово.
Готово.
Супер, тогда отчет пошел.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Our team represents Rusagro's M&A Corporate Finance Department. Today, we are going to conduct a presentation for the use of the management and shareholders of PJSC Cherkizova Group to consider acquisition of 71.9% of one of the largest agricultural holdings in Russia and internationally, PLC Rosagro, for 104 billion rubles. The deal will feature Cherkizova's strategy of expanding land holdings, new production facilities construction, and acquisition of other companies, including new business segments. The deal promises significant synergistic effect for the investor, especially on EBITDA and net income, due to improvements in operations in combined companies. First, let's start with the company overview. Rusagro is a leading vertically integrated agricultural holding in Russia, which comprises of 4 key divisions: agriculture, oil and fats, meat and sugar segment. Today, company is the largest in Russia producer of unrefined sunflower oil and consumer margarine, second largest producer of industrial fats and mayonnaise, and third largest sugar and pork producer and agriculture landholder. The strategic goal of Rusagro is to increase returns for the shareholder through expansion, added value products, innovations, and high quality human capital. The business model is based on the vertical integration of all key business segments and offers advantages of economies of scale, diversification, and value chain control. Rusagro shows 4.4% better return than MSCI index, and brokers' consensus recommendation is to buy. And now my colleague will tell you about the industry overview.
Let me start from Russian sugar market. Due to the sugar overproduction in 2019, sugar market fell into crisis. Severe market conditions led to the boost of inflation, and consequently, Russian government imposed regulatory constraints to fix sugar retail prices. Therefore, in 2020, the volume of processed sugar beets fell by 23.9%, and now the sugar market needs some time to recover. The situation in the pork market is not as tough as in the sugar market. In 2020, the volume of produced pork fully covered the domestic demand in the Russian market. Therefore, import fell by 83% compared to 2019. And due to the severe competition between the major players, we expect the future growth of pork production targeted on export opportunities. If we talk about oil and fat market, in 2020, we can see a clear decrease in the volume of seeds harvest due to unfavorable climatic conditions. The same reasons led to almost 30% increase in exports of oil and fat production, up to 282,000 tons. Rusagro dominates sunflower oil and margarine markets, holding 12 and 50% respectively. And with average prices for oil and fat products growing, the business is sure to generate high income. Russian dairy market is also steadily growing. In 2020, farms of oil categories produced 32.2 million tons of raw milk, 2.7% higher than the previous year, thanks to the government support. The additional demand for dairy products will be created through the rise of exports. Speaking about agriculture market, Rusagro land bank is almost 650,000 hectares. Russia is expected to continue the decrease of its land bank in the future. Wheat and barley are crops that have the best yield, 3 and 5 tons per hectare in 2020 respectively. And now a word to my colleague.
Now we consider Rusagro to be the best investment option in terms of compatibility with Cherkezovo's development strategy, because both companies operate in the central region and occupy closely related but still different segments, which cancels potential cannibalization but still allows for significant geographical synergies. And buying Rusagro, Cherkezovo would mainly pay for assets in 3 different segments. First, Cherkezovo aims to expand meat production and enter foreign markets. And meanwhile, Rusagro's main strategic goal is to establish massive exports to China by developing the already existent capacities in Primorye. And companies share the same goal, and Cherkezovo would increase its pork production more than 2-fold. Second, one of the main supplementary goals of Cherkezovo is to achieve a full compound feed self-sufficiency to complete full vertical integration of the business. And the crucial factor here is that oils and fats factories by product is a key component for compound feed production. So Cherkezovo could utilize Rusagro's plans to achieve their goal as a side effect. And also, both companies aim to increase the share of high value-added products in their mix. And oils and fat segment production will suit Cherkezovo's product mix as an HVA itself. And also, notably, Cherkezovo currently enters the oils and fats segment itself by constructing a major plant in Lipetsk. The third, Cherkezovo's strategic goal in agriculture is expanding grain production while ensuring that the production is sufficient. And apart from increasing the output more than 2-fold, purchasing Rusagro will allow for the share of expertise. And Rusagro's expertise is proven by the grain sales price, which is 7% higher than that of Cherkezovo. And lastly, other Rusagro's minor sugar segment will allow for diversification of Cherkezovo's portfolio and counter the volatility of other agricultural production prices, which Cherkezovo also acknowledges. So in general, Cherkezovo will secure its market positioning as the largest meat segment player will complete full vertical integration and will enter the desired domestic and foreign markets.
For Rusagro valuation, we use DCF analysis in line with preceding transactions and public comparables. Our revenue and EBITDA forecasts for 2021 are 4% and 2% accordingly. Since the most common multiples in agriculture are EV/EBITDA, PE, and EV revenue, we used these multiples during our analysis. The stock is trading at EV/EBITDA of 4.1, which is below the median of 6x. To sum up valuation, our estimate for Rusagro's equity value is 144 billion rubles, or 1,073 rubles per share. The company as a whole is correctly estimated by the market, but there is a potential for share price growth.
Let's now discuss the deal itself. Based on our DCF valuation, we propose a premium of 19.1% over the market, resulting in a 1,073 rubles of a share price. We forecast net debt to EBITDA multiple of the combined company to be around 2.6. However, since there is also a tender offer we have to consider, this value may turn out to be even higher. Speaking about the tender offer itself, we suggest the price of 950 rubles. That way, as we believe, some minority stakeholders are likely to accept the offer in order to lock in the investment profits. Here we consider three main scenarios. In the first scenario, all minority stakeholders accept the offer, resulting in an opportunity for Cherkizova to delist Rusagro and make the company completely private. The second scenario implies that a majority, around 50% of minority stakeholders, accept the offer, resulting in Cherkizova acquiring around 86% stake in Rusagro. And the last scenario suggests that only 20% of minority shareholders accept the deal, and Cherkizova gets that way a stake of around 77.5%. As we assume that net debt to EBITDA over 3.0 could be a challenge for the combined company, we propose the following financing scheme. We pay 40% by issuing stock, around 6% in cash, and the other is paid through debt. In this case, even if all minority stakeholders accept the offer, the combined company will be able to keep net debt to EBITDA under 3.0 and pay off the debt within 5 to 6 years. The acquisition is highly accretive. We expect earnings per share to increase by 81%. Now my colleague Artem will tell you about all the potential deal synergies.
Yeah, synergetic effects are one of the main rationales for the deal, and we have identified the 5 major effects. First, Cherkizova is launching the new oils and fats factory in Lipetsk with processing capacity of 80% of total Cherkizova's grain production. And the factory will be located nicely for Rusagro to supply it with grain with around 400 kilometers of mileage reduction for, once again, massive tonnage of grain. Second, it is possible to reallocate the fields and their connection to factories in terms of logistics. Rusagro has massive oils and fats production in the Svarov region, and Cherkizova has infrastructure in Ulyanovsk in the region. So that will also unlock significant synergies. Third, Rusagro's employees receive wage 14% less than that of Cherkizova. And additionally, Rusagro is a target company, so workers would expect a 7% wage raise after the deal on average. So it's realistic to assume that company will spend around 2 billion rubles annually on additional wages, but will also reduce the administrative workforce, which the team estimates to be around 30%. And as for revenue synergies, Cherkizova could sell their grain at 7% higher price due to using Rusagro's contacts and best practices in production of grain. So the potential synergies may in the end exceed the offer premium of 19% with 19 billion rubles of present value. And this completes the reasoning of our implication that Rusagro is indeed the best major investment opportunity for Cherkizova. Thank you for your attention. Now we're ready to answer your questions.
Let me start with a question. It's Dmitry Musatov from KPMG. You would probably hear that in the market, it is usual to say that the expected synergies coming out of M&A is actually a rare species. In particular, less than 20% of the deals worldwide would end up in any synergies. In this respect, why would you expect those synergies be realized in the deal?
We selected the target itself, not the target, but the buyer company that will have at first many strategic synergies. They will suit each other's strategic focus. And secondly, they will have significant synergies in a dollar equivalent. So we calculated the transportation synergies and the SG&A synergies and the revenue synergies. And we consider it to be realistic because even accounting for the decrease, the 20 billion ruble decrease of NPV for shareholders from increasing the wages for the workers, it still amounts up to 19 billion rubles of synergy. Because we believe that, for example, the revenue synergy could be realized because it would imply only the 7% increase of the sales price, which is quite realistic. And as for transportation synergies, they rely on the mileage that the grain has to travel from one place to another, and that is also quite subsistent, as we would say. And other buyers which we considered don't have as much synergetic effect.
Would you probably comment in more detail in terms of the revenue synergies? As far as I understand, majority of what Rusagro and Cherkizo would sell is somehow linked to commodity pricing. Is there going to be change in sometime in the future so that you could materialize this synergy in pricing?
Well, in general, the grain prices are really volatile, and we can see on a slide, the second slide, that, for example, wheat is a highly volatile commodity, and we accounted for that change. For instance, some years or future years of our period, which we forecast, also account for the increase of and decrease of wheat prices, for example. And the realization is that Cherkizo would use at first Rusagro's purchases contact base, and secondly will raise its crop quality, so they indeed could sell the grain at a higher price.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of rationale for Cherkizo, why would you think it's a good buy instead of buying separate meat processing plants, consolidating the land banks from the market? So what will be the effect on the overall EV/EBITDA multiple for Cherkizo? So basically two questions.
Well, instead of buying some different assets in terms of land bank and factories and plants, it would be more beneficial for Cherkizo to purchase the already vertically integrated business that is aimed to for export to China, export of meat to China. So it supplements the strategy of Rusagro itself. So Cherkizo wouldn't need to implement these assets into their chain, because these businesses would constitute like two different major segments.
Mm-hmm.
And here is the breakdown. Like here's the breakdown what Cherkizo would actually pay for. Like half of the deal, no, just a bit less than half, is oils and fats assets. And each of these three segments actually represent the group of assets that is valuable for Cherkizo. And they only work as well if they are vertically integrated, because, for example, oils and fats, it wouldn't be as much beneficial for Cherkizovo if they couldn't produce compound feed from these assets. And that is what Rusagro does.
Mm-hmm. Do you know that export is already in process to China? Are there any bans for the moment?
Rusagro now exports meat and soybeans to China. So they have supply contracts, which is also good for Cherkizovo. There have been some debate on, I guess, the biosafety of meat export, to China. Some problems, but here into play comes the Cherkizovo's HACCP, which is a hazard protection biosafety standards. I don't remember how to decipher it. So when combining Cherkizovo with Rusagro, Cherkizovo could implement these biosafety standards to Rusagro, to their production volumes, and it would be even more beneficial for the export. But yeah, now it is quite complicated to export meat, but that is the strategy that both companies follow. So I hope I answered the question.
Mm-hmm. And what would be the impact on the overall Cherkizovo valuation multiple?
We haven't calculated the multiple.
No, just maybe you can explain the key drivers. So what's going to be the effect?
The main effect of synergies is in the terminal value. So as the synergies will return not as much of yearly cash flow, but rather in the terminal value. So if you open the contribution page, you will see that they're just around 3% to EBITDA accretion. So the synergies will mostly reduce costs, because 13 out of 19 billion rubles of synergy is accounted for the cost synergies.
Okay, we understand that this will lead to increase in EBITDA. What will be the effect on the multiple?
Well, we haven't calculated the multiple, the EBITDA multiple.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions also. How would you feel on Mr. Mashkovich's place if you're offering him $14.5 per GDR when his stock traded at 17 a couple of years ago? Well, I can pretend that I'm Mr. Mashkovich and I'm asking you, why should I sell for 14.5 when my stock traded at 17 a couple of years ago?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please? Did I understand you correctly that if you're Mr. Mashkovich, why would you sell?
At 14.5 per GDR, it's your offer 20% premium to current price. Current price is around 12. And my stock traded at 17, which is at, I don't know, 50% premium to current prices a couple of years ago.
We think that now this is the right offer, because since within several years there, I think Rusagro has changed, and if you need it now to sell to sell your stake at Rusagro as Mr. Mashkovich, we think that our proposal is very reasonable, at that time of the moment. If Mr. Mashkovich needs to sell and sell his stake right now in 2021.
So you imply that my company became worse during the last 3 years, not better, as you're offering me a discount to the last 3-year price.
I think we've also implied that the market has changed, the situation has changed. Now it's our offer. It is the fair price at the current moment, and we're offering about 20% premium over the market. And
Okay.
Okay.
How do you calculate it, this 20% premium? Why do you expect me to give all the synergies from the deal to Cherkizova and not to realize them myself?
I think we first of all we calculated the premium, the proposed premium, using DCF analysis. We took moderate growth rates and we ended up with 19.1% of premium. And answering your question regarding why wouldn't you realize your synergies with someone else, we think it's, as Mr. Mashkovich, it's only up to you to decide. We think that the synergies will be best realized in combination with our company, Cherkizova.
Yeah, I could add that if you see the chart of the synergies and the offer premium, you could see that it will result in, I guess, 3 billion rubles of NPV for shareholders. So the synergy effect is almost in line with the offer premium. So we consider it to be the rationale for the premium. You could open the slide.
Thank you. And the last probably question from my side, have you considered some of the parts valuation? Do you know, at least, can you estimate how much at least only the land bank of Rusagro could be worth?
We have calculated the, at first, to begin with, Rusagro leases half of their land bank, and half of land bank is their property. And we calculated the whole land bank to be 31 billion rubles and 15.5 for only their part. So we try to evaluate each segment as like asset-based approach, not as a general approach, but as to verify. And we calculated that their land bank price is 15 billion rubles.
What was your assumptions with respect to price per hectare?
I guess that was around 50,000 rubles per hectare, if I'm not mistaken. I could find
Why
it.
should I sell 4 times below the current market price?
Is it below the market price?
Yes, significantly.
No, we found the data on how much the land bank costs. I couldn't find it right now, I guess. But we found that the land bank price in the central region is around that price.
Okay. So I think thank you. That's it for me.
I have one more question. In your DCF analysis, I wonder what was your forecast for commodity prices? What would you expect from the market in the upcoming several years?
Let me answer the question. The reasoning behind our pricing, we modeled that currently the sugar segment is falling, So we assumed that our assumption based on sugar segment that it will continue to experience some fall in price within the next 2 years because of some restrictions and regulations. And the other products, the most conservative assumption was that their price will grow at around inflation rate.
Would you use some forecasts prepared by the renowned agencies like OECD, FAO, World Bank?
Unfortunately, we didn't use any of side forecasts.
Okay, thank you.
I just add about the land bank. I now found our estimate for the land bank price, and that is about 40 to 50,000 rubles in Lipetsk region, for example. That's it.
Okay, we will finish this presentation. Guys, thank you very much. Good Will Hunting, you may prepare.
Thank you.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Are you ready, guys?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, you may start.
Good afternoon. We're glad to present you potential acquisition of Rusagro by Cherkizovo Group. Here's the presenting team. So, to the executive summary, the controlling shareholder, Vadim Mashkovich, wants to sell his stake completely or reduce it to a minority and get at least $200 million in cash. We present the potential acquisition of the whole stake of Vadim Mashkovich of 71.9%. By Cherkizovo Group, the implied equity value is equal to 164 billion rubles. The deal premium is 33%. The deal will be financed by the combination of equity and long-term debt. The other detail will be considered in the later section.
Next slide, please. Largest vertical integrated agricultural holding that has its assets diversified widely in Russia. It provides more than 50 countries with its goods. Rusagro Group's business covers 5 key segments, and it currently holds one of the leading positions in 4 of them. The next slide, please. GDRs have recovered after the world economic decline due to COVID, and now the price has reached 918 ruble per GDR. The proximity to recent local maximum and the fact that Rusagro has overtaken both indexes amongst Russia and amongst consumer indicate that the company has overcome the crisis successfully. And let's proceed to the next slide. Stable financial positions with growing revenue and profitability. Company's revenue has doubled since 2018. Oil and fat segment was the most significant driver. Rusagro demonstrated an increase in EBITDA margin by 20% in 2020, but the revenue growth rates have slowed. Let's proceed to the next slide. Largest meat producer in Russia and one of the leading meat processors with 109 billion rubles market capitalization. Cherkizovo has shown revenue growth of 3% CAGR since 2016. And in 2020, the company showed solid financial results with increased margins and decreased leverage. Next slide, please. About the industry, agriculture segment demonstrated a multi-directional movement in 2020, while grain yield increased, oil crops yield and sugar beet went down. Oil and fat segment remains in the same level, but the demand has increased because of the improvement of foreign destinations. Meat segment has grown because of pork consumption growth, and the sugar segment has suffered a decrease in cultivation areas and crop yields. Let's go to the next slide.
Well, as stated previously, we've used both income and market approaches to value our company. With the use of DCF, we've reached a share price for 1,106 rubles per share, which is a 23% premium to Rusagro's share price as of 31st December. To be consistent, we also used the exit multiple method and received a value of 1,060 rubles per share, which is close to the value received by the Gordon Growth method. In our calculations, we used VAC equal to 10.6%, and we took the terminal growth rate as a long-term real GDP growth equal to 3%. Next slide, please. On the next slide, we can see the detailed free cash flow calculations, and from the sensitivity tables, we can see that the values aren't that volatile, which proves the consistency of our results. Next slide, please. Regarding the market-based valuation approach, we've used both trading and transaction multiples. For the trading multiples, we've chosen EV to revenue, EV to EBITDA, and price to earnings as our main multiples, as they are the most common multiples used in agriculture. To select the most appropriate set of comparable companies, we've used the following selection criteria. First of all, we've looked for companies in the CIS and EMEA, so the geography would be relatively similar. Our second criteria was that the company would have similar financial characteristics, namely a market cap and EV of more than $1 billion, comparable revenue, and an EBITDA margin of more than 15%. Lastly, we looked at companies that had net debt to EBITDA ratio of not more than 4x for comparable risk. As a result, we can see that Rusagro's forward multiples are close to the median values, and using this approach, we've received a share price in the range of 900 to 1,500 rubles per share. Next slide, please. As for the transaction multiples, company valuation was based on the LTM EV to EBITDA and EV to revenue multiples used in deals among companies in the agricultural sector. Here, the selection criteria was the following. The date of deal realization should have lied between 2018-2019, and the observed countries should once again be from CIS and EMEA. Moreover, we looked at deals with an average deal premium of around 20 to 30%, so they would be similar to our case. Next slide, please. And finally, to summarize our valuation section, we can take a look at the football field. As stated previously, we valued the company using both the income approach for DCF based on Gordon Growth model and the market approach through both trading multiples, use the median values of forward EV to EBITDA, EV to revenue, and price to earning multiples of comparable companies, and the median values of LTM EV to EBITDA, EV to revenue multiples using previous transactions. Applying the weights of 70% to the values received through the income approach and 30% to the values received through the market approach, we arrived at the company's equity value equal to around 164 billion rubles, which is a 33% premium to its current market cap. All in all, looking at the suggested range, it can be concluded that Rusagro is currently fairly valued, but with a high potential for growth. Next slide, please.
So finally, to the deal rationale. The name of the slide says for itself, it is all about leading the consolidated market. The combined company will be able to redefine the industry and create a leading agricultural complex. It will share leadership in pork, in sugar and oils and fat segment. It also will have the second largest land bank. We expect that companies will be able to share their expertise and technological solutions in all their common business segments. We also expect that companies will be able to strengthen its presence in key retail chains with strong brands. They also will be able to create new value proposition by uniting brands in groups for different customers, which will result in higher sales and overall margins. Also, advanced competitive position will allow companies to squeeze out inefficient companies, which allow extra space for further development due to the best value offered at a considerable lower cost. Finally, and most importantly, combined company will be able to relieve the main pain of agricultural producers, the excessive and prohibitive bargaining power of buyers. Key retail chains will no longer be able to benefit from their bargaining position in the new market reality. So digging into details, companies will be able to share their expertise to improve their harvesting by exchanging crops and share their expertise in agrochemicals and fertilizers. Basically, there are 6 components to optimal yield: weather, which is uncontrollable, field and soil, which are hard and costly to control, and the final agrochemical fertilizers and seeds, which are the main point for consideration. Company shareable lands are concentrated in the central Chernozem region, thereby the impact of different fields and soils on harvest is insignificant. To the right, you can see the crop yield comparison, which shows solid capacity to improve, especially for corn. The crop replacement schedule suggests that companies are able to replace 1/4 of the field each year according to the normal scenario. This will result in a gross harvest of almost 143,000 tons in the 2025 and the revenue of almost 2.4 billion rubles. For price synergies, we expect them to realize synergies in meat and agricultural segments in the nearest term. The higher market share and the increased concentration will allow companies to increase realized prices for key customers group, retail chains, and food production companies. Cherkizova will also be able to enter new high margin markets for exports and diversify its customer base and sales and prices from fluctuations. Moreover, Cherkizova will be able to realize cross sales of its unique production with Rusagro, which will improve overall margins. In the bottom middle part of the slide, you can see change in realized prices, which will result in almost 1 billion revenue in the first year and almost 2.3 billion revenue in the final year. So finally, to the synergy split, recall the sources of synergies for revenue, higher crops yield, and higher realized prices. For costs, we expect that companies are able to eliminate complementary costs and share best practices among the divisions. We expect that companies are able to save up to 10% for certain line items in COGS and SG&A. The total synergies value will reach almost 5 billion in the first year and will gradually grow at CAGR of 15% to reach almost 8.5 billion rubles in the final year. The net present value of total synergies is equal to 63 billion rubles. After deducting deal premium, will arrive to the value created of 22 billion rubles, 72% of which is attributable to Cherkizova.
So now a few words about merger model. The next slide, please. So the deal will be financed through the combination of debt and equity, and the share of debt will be 77%, while the share of equity will be 23%. After the deal, Mashkovich will hold 24% in the combined company, and we think that he will be able to sell his share to a potential financial investor at a higher price. We have also considered the case of mandatory tender offer, and we can say that even though all 28% of minority shareholders, including 7% of management, will acquire this offer, it will not significantly influence the leverage of the company. The next slide. We also would love to say that the deal will be EPS accretive. It means that in 2021, the accretion will be more than 50%. And moreover, Cherkizova's operating and net income margins will increase after the deal, as well as the combined free cash flow, which will double more than twofold even in 2021. And we've also considered some potential risk related to the deal, but we can say that they're not significant, so they all can be mitigated. That's all we wanted to say. In the appendix, you can find all additional slides like a description of potential buyers, some benchmarking, analysis of different industry segments, and so on. So thank you for your attention, and now we're ready to answer your questions.
In your comparable analysis, when you look at the companies, let's start with this part of the presentation. When you look at the comparables, why would you omit Astarta from Ukraine being the largest sugar producer?
Well, I guess that when I looked at S&P Capital IQ and managed the criteria, which is presented on the slide, I guess maybe it was too large and it didn't fit into our selection criteria because I didn't see it coming up actually. So probably it would because I filled in specific criteria. So regarding the revenue, the financial criteria, the net debt to EBITDA, probably maybe the net debt to EBITDA ratio was too high, or other financial criteria wasn't satisfied because when I filled in, it didn't come up. So I think the answer lies in this.
So the question comes to your criteria.
Yeah.
What the rationale to cut the revenues or market cap? Would this be a very much significant influence to the company usability, to the usability of the comparable?
Well, we tried to look up comparables that were truly comparables based on both enterprise value and all financial criteria. And if we took into analysis a rather large comparable, I think that the multiples would rise a lot, because the maximum would rise and the 75 percentile will rise, and this would have an impact on the market-based approach and on the football field, basically.
In terms of the DCF, the question arises whether you would rely on the forecasts of the largest analytical agencies in terms of the commodity pricing expectations.
So can you explain once again?
What would you use for commodity pricing forecasts in your DCF analysis?
It was mostly based on the benchmarking of different broker reports and also our estimates. We expect prices for some commodities to grow with the inflation. For some, we expect some higher growth. We also imply some markup due to the increased pricing power of the combined company.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and another question is related to the synergies. Why would you think that the company be capable to really get those synergies materialized? What would be the action plan? How would this merger appear to be successful, and why?
So let's start from the improvement in harvesting. Once again, let's recall that arable lands are concentrated in central Chernozem region. The field and soil is practically the same for both companies. Thereby, we can mitigate this. The thing is that they can really exchange their crops to achieve optimal yields. They also can share their expertise in agrochemicals and fertilizers. This does not require much cost, but this really requires some time to do so, because they just cannot instantaneously replace all the crops. Then it comes to price synergies. There are a lot of supporting factors which we have mentioned. Firstly, company will combine the leading brands in the industry for pork, poultry, chicken, oils, sugar, and milk segments. They will be able to create a new value proposition, which will also support it. The market concentration will increase, and the market share will allow Cherkizova to realize higher prices. Also, for the overall group, Cherkizova will be able to enter new export markets, which will also support further prices. For costs, we were rather moderate. We expected that they can just eliminate some complementary costs, some employee overhead, and so on. And we expect that those synergies can really be implemented, but at a different pace. Of course, those synergies can be realized really fast. Whereas revenue synergies will take some time.
You mentioned that you would ultimately be capable to materialize this power of a joint business over the retail chains. How would this expected price increase combine with the unavoidable and already obvious decline in real disposable income of population, of the Russian population?
We have considered these points. That's why we have such supporting factors like new exports. But what will be the situation? Companies will have a choice either to fully sell to the domestic market or sell to export markets. Thereby, they will be able to regulate their prices themselves. Actually, the current regulatory policy supports this idea because, if you recall, a moment ago, government tried to implement new regulatory policy which was aimed at retailers and agricultural companies, but it failed in terms of agricultural, and all the burden was placed at retailers, which had to forfeit their margins and sell at a lower cost. So,
thank you for your answers.
As you know, the price restrictions are really short term. That's why we don't think that the government will adopt it for a long time. That's why we don't need to add this to our financial model.
Yeah,
in terms of exports, sorry, you need to finish?
No, I
Go ahead.
I would like to add regarding the previous question that recently, if we look at the 2020 annual report of Rusagro and Cherkizova, even though the company also mentions that the real wealth of the population has decreased due to the fact that the company sells products of main necessity, this impact wouldn't impact, because even though the company's wealth even in 2020 has decreased, the company had quite a good year. So I think that the impact wouldn't be that severe. That's all I want to say. So go ahead.
Thank you.
A question from me. In terms of export, which products you might think will add some value to the top line? So do you think it's going to be pork, grains, or what, and why? Did you made any price analysis on the export market comparing to domestic?
We analyzed exclusively realized prices for Rusagro, and they appeared to be either in line with the overall market prices for exports, or just a little bit higher for some products and a little bit lower for the other. We expect mostly pork to contribute to the export prices because to the moment it's the main export good of Rusagro, and Cherkizova will also be able to join this party. For other business segments, we expect a nice sales in sugar and grain segments. We do not expect really high sales from milk, and poultry and chicken are really competing in Arabic countries, so we also expect them to sell there.
So can you say that domestic prices are lower, higher? So for now, what is the share of exports in total sales? So maybe that would explain why they choose that or this market.
Oh, okay. So maybe I should say that Cherkizova is less export oriented at the moment, but it has significant plans to enter export markets. Rusagro is a great way to do so. They have their contracts, they have their customers there. Thereby, I think it will be a nice deal. What was the second part of the question?
The second part was did you compare the prices on domestic market and on the export market, so you can summarize properly which one is most attractive for the joint company or whatever company it is?
Yes, there are some fluctuations actually. To the moment, I can say that domestic market is really lucrative due to some implications which arise from COVID-19. But in the longer time perspective, we expect export prices to exceed domestic prices by far.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, I should add that it depends very much on the ruble appreciation also. Depreciation, well, how the currency would react. And depending on that, the prices on foreign countries would also change.
The final question on the export.
For example,
so what will you say about which product will do the most on the revenue side in terms of export?
Pork.
Pork?
Yes, it's to the moment it contributes the largest portion to the Rusagro's exports, and Cherkizova's also. Previously, Cherkizova didn't have a great access to the Chinese market, but nowadays the situation is changing, and the combined company will be able to do this implementation much faster for Cherkizova.
Do they,
for example,
do they really...
if we speak about, sorry for interrupting you, I just want to add that, for example, if we speak about Rusagro has special licenses in from Chinese government, and that's why it can sell its products in Chinese market, which Cherkizova cannot do. That's why the merger will be a good deal.
Mm-hmm. I've opened the report for 2020 for Rusagro right now. It didn't have any export to China. Do you think it's really eligible to that?
Once again, you're speaking about Rusagro, am I right? Yes, it was the implications of the COVID restrictions. Then the pork market for exports was closed, but in the longer term, we believe that the contractual relationships of Rusagro with Chinese parties will resume, and the export of pork, for instance, will recover steadily.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Can we go to slide number 16? Looking at the slide, I can see that you expect EBITDA of Rusagro to decline from 32 billion rubles to around 28 billion rubles. If you take your enterprise value and divide it by 2021 EV/EBITDA, why do you think that Rusagro EBITDA should decline from 2020 to 2021?
So can you repeat which figure did you arrive then divided?
I arrive at around 28 billion ruble EBITDA for 2021. And for this year, if I'm not mistaken, Rusagro EBITDA is around 32 billion rubles.
So you mean that we have different EBITDA figure in the table for Rusagro?
No, I think no. Just you say that Rusagro currently trades at 7.6 times EV/EBITDA 2021. Yes. By saying this, you imply that its EBITDA will decline from 2020 to 2021.
Yes, this should be mostly attributable to some pricing situation in the core markets. Individually for Rusagro, for instance, now the sugar price is kept at 36 with 5 rubles from the government. Also, there was not really productive years. The recent years were not really productive. The weather was not really favorable. Thereby, the overall harvesting decreased, and it is expected to decrease for some higher margin crops and increase for some lower margin crops.
So you imply that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I should also add that in the table we have values that are in line with the main projections of analytics of brokers of banks. So, yeah.
Do you know which banks exactly forecast a decline in EBITDA?
I don't quite remember. I just checked both bases of Thomson Reuters and S&P Capital IQ. And in both databases, these figures were applied. I would not probably name. I can't remember the names because I have to look up at the database once again.
Okay, thank you. Also, we are staying on the same page. Looking at Cherkizova multiple, it's 6.1. You are offering 20%, something around 20% premium to Rusagro, which gets us effective deal multiple of around 9 times. At the same time, you forecast synergies at around 100, let's say run rate of synergies around $100 million per annum. Do you think that the difference in threefold in multiples would justify the synergies?
Actually, maybe it is a little bit confusing. The data presented here is based on broker estimates. According to our valuation, the implied multiple will be in line with the market with 5.6 for Rusagro. Moving on to the synergies, we do not think that there is a huge difference in multiples, and the deal premium is really reasonable at this point of time. So,
have you done accretion dilution at these multiples?
At these multiples, no.
Okay. Also, coming back to exports thing that I think was mentioned several times during the previous presentation, during this presentation. Do you know that no company in Russia is allowed to export to China, export pork to China?
To the moment, yes, but our expectations are that the situation will change in the following term. Then all the restrictions will be declined, will be ended.
Do you know why Russian pork is not exported globally? The main reason why Russian pork is not allowed to be exported everywhere around the globe.
There were some situations with swine flu, which can contribute to this.
Exactly, and exactly.
But we expect that sharing better practices will improve piglet survival and the overall state of the pigs. We think that the situation will change really.
Okay. And probably the last question. I'm in no wonder that Mikhailov family would love to acquire Rusagro for such a price. But I'm wondering why Mr. Mashkovich should sell.
Firstly, a nice premium of 33%. And in turn, he will actually also receive a share in a growing and a nice company of Cherkizova. Thereby, the perspective is really nice. He won't have to be all into the operations, but in future, he will really realize a decent gain, capital appreciation via sale of his stake, for instance, for financial investors or maybe to Mikhailov family. Or maybe actually SPO or re-IPO can be considered for Cherkizova. So we expect a nice gain for Vladimir Mashkovich.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think it's a nice thing for him to get set face to face to Mikhailov's family with the minority stake?
It is actually his wish, we think, because he does not want to be all into the operations. And I think there won't be any problems, especially because Mr. Basov will remain at Rusagro with his 7%, and I think the situation will be nice for Vladimir Mashkovich.
And why? I sincerely, I don't understand why.
So you imply that there can be some problems that Vladimir Mashkovich has only a minority stake, right?
Yeah.
okay.
So it's a clear corporate conflict might affect the company, and that effect might be negative. Didn't you analyze that? So why didn't you propose to have a full exit, or at least some exit mechanism which might help Mashkovich to secure some price in the future. Because by going to SPO or IPO, I'm not sure that they will be able to sell a stake of 24% as a secondary offering. So
that's why we also consider financial investors as potential exits for Vadim Mashkovich. It is really reasonable to think that some corporate conflicts may arise, but we imply that this won't be a real problem given all the administrative resources of Vadim Mashkovich and the personality of Mikhailov family.
Yeah, and in any case, Cherkizova could buy out the Mashkovich Vadim share itself, so not through going through to an SPO or IPO, but it's for a buyout, well, buyback. I mean.
But still, you don't have the mechanism of this buyout, right? In your deal.
Well, I think that, well, our main assumption that Vadim Mashkovich would be happy with how the things turn out for him, because it's truly a growing company. He would receive decent dividends because the dividend policy is quite, it's around 50%. So, and in case that if we wouldn't be happy, I think that this would be no problem for Cherkizova to offer him a buyback for the same price. But our main assumption was that Vadim Mashkovich would be happy with all the things that turned out for him.
We hope that we all will be happy. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, team, thank you. Now you may relax. The next team, reservoir dogs, you may start preparing your materials. You have around 3 minutes.
Can you see our presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So I think we're ready to start. Hello, dear colleagues. Today we would like to present an investment opportunity for Wilmar International. Here you can see team members who worked on a presentation, and let's go to an executive summary. So this presentation contains an investment advisory proposal of Reservoir Dogs team to Wilmar International Management. We propose acquisition of 79.2% stake, which can be up to 100% stake. It's dependent on free float shareholders, mandatory trading offer acceptance rate. For $1.4 to $1.7 billion, what equals $13 per share, 17% premium to current share price. Deal date is the 31st of December 2020. Supposed debt cash structure in the most realistic MTO scenario is debt 62% and cash 38%. So let's move to a company overview.
Rusagro is completely a vertical integrated Russian agriculture company. It operates in 5 main segments: oil, fats, meat, sugar, agro products, and dairy products. Rusagro has a strong market position in 4 segments out of 5. There is a new segment launched in the end of 2018. The main group of shareholders is Vadim Mashkovich and management. They make up 79.2% stake. Company's key financial are quite strong. Most of the debt was raised to finance capex programs, and after finishing decent projects, net debt EBITDA will be staying less than target 3 times. Next slide, please.
As for assets and position of the company, they are located in 13 constituent entities, primarily concentrated in Central Federal Region, with fat oil facilities disseminated in several regions, and meat facilities concentrated in 3,000 entities. There are solid capacities which increased in the last couple of years due to capital expenditure program. The company plans to expand its presence in the market by creating new production capacities. A significant part of capex budget is planned to be invested in meat segment.
Also, Rusagro continues to develop its desugarization and oil facilities. Most of the biggest capex projects will be finished by the end of 2021. That is expected to boost FCFF significantly. Next slide, please. As for the business model, it's necessary to highlight that Rusagro has vertical and inter-segment integration that is seen as a competitive advantage of the company. All segments are a full cycle production. Sales are affected primarily in domestic market. Next slide, please.
Government is regulating prices and upper limit for retail product in every segment. It leads to restrained growth of price. Oil consumption in the forecast period will slightly increase. High feed prices have reduced profitability of meat segment, but it won't hurt the Rusagro business as they produce meals themselves. Next slide, please. Government plans to extend sugar price cuts, eliminate import tax. Compared to imported dairy products, Russia has become more competitive, displacing foreign cheeses, buttermilk, powder, and wine from the domestic market. More than 13 million hectares of agricultural land will be commissioned in 10 years in Russia. Next slide, please.
At this point, we would like to draw your attention to the reasons why we think that Vilmar is interested in the deal. First of all, in a search for potential acquisition target, it is a good idea to look at Russia. There are two reasons for this. First, Russia is a major agricultural region with favorable conditions for further development and access to the largest consumption centers. The second, Vilmar already has a successful experience of doing business in Russia, so it will be reasonable to use this local experience further. Moreover, Vilmar operates through a wide network of branches around the world and actively uses M&A deals as the main source of companies' goals and as a tool to launch new business departments. Therefore, acquiring Rusagro will improve Vilmar's several export destinations, such as CIS countries, who are the main Russian trading partners. Such improvement becomes possible due to the softer custom duties regimes. Next slide, please. One additional reason to acquire Rusagro is its highly integrated business model. Since one of the key Vilmar strategy features is vertical integration, but the company actually misses some steps of production that are already a part of Rusagro business. Overall, it makes Vilmar's oil plantation structure more diversified and will strengthen its market positions. Furthermore, Russian margarine, mayonnaise, oilseeds, and grain markets will likely face the slow growth in the future that limits the growth opportunities for main Vilmar's businesses in Russia. Rusagro, as the main player on both markets, is perfect target to meet Vilmar's growth needs. Next slide, please. The deal could become even more attractive because of the synergies that will primarily come from the 5 main sources. The major source is implementing the Vilmar's technology of using molasses as a supplement in compound feed. It boosts its efficiency by 5% and results in less grains used and causes savings accordingly. But at the same time, it slightly decreases the sales of sugar produced from molasses. It is also SG&A cost savings through partial reduction of targets duplicating corporate office staff. It is also marketing synergies that provide an increase in sales of Rusagro products due to Vilmar's strong marketing team experience and promotion technologies for such brands as Astoria and Raba. It is also R&D cost savings that could be achieved through combining R&D departments and using Rusagro developments in dairy products, such as creams and spreads that are already part of its product line. The last source is transportation cost savings due to intra-group sales in combined companies, since 75% of Rusagro oilseeds are sold to the third-party buyers, which are located far from company facilities. Selling part of them to the Vilmar's plants in Volga Federal Region will cause transportation cost savings. The initial estimate of present value for all synergies is $280 million, but it has a potential upside.
Okay, so talking about transaction terms, we assume price of $13 per share at the most fair one. This price reflects a 17% premium to a current share price. Acquiring such a decent stake will cause a mandatory trading offer according to Cyprus M&A law. Here you can see some main MTO scenarios, which are differed by the free float shareholders' acceptance rate. As you can mention, shareholder structure is very conducive for Vilmar because acquirer will get significant controlling stake in Rusagro, whatever the acceptance rate of minorities will be. We consider 50% of minorities accepting the offer at the most possible option. As a result, Wilmar will have acquired 89.6% of Rusagro for 1.5 billion USD. Big size of Wilmar gives it opportunity to use significant portion of cash. We estimated that $602 million is the biggest amount of cash that can be used, and the rest will be paid via debt. So net debt EBITDA of combined company will not be affected by any MTO scenario dramatically. Net debt EBITDA will stay around 2.0x to 2.2x in all the scenarios possible. So let's move to evaluation part. DCF method gave us an equity value of $1.9 million, what reflects 32% premium to the current market cap of Rusagro. We expect each segment revenue to grow together with EBITDA in the future, what basically gives us strong valuation. As we already mentioned, our free cash flow to firm will be boosted by the finish of main capital expenditure programs. Here you can see how company's valuation is affected by changes in weighted average cost of capital and some key operational metrics. There are some changes in total equity value within these scenarios. However, even such a depressed scenario, as all commodities prices simultaneously go down, cannot affect equity value dramatically, what proves strong Rusagro business model. Here you can see trading multiples. We analyzed 4 multiples and compared them to emerging and developed market peers, and came to the conclusion that Rusagro is slightly underestimated compared to both groups. Talking about precedent transactions, we would like to draw your attention to a premiums paid. Median premium is 45%, what is much higher than the offer price premium of the potential Wilmar-Rusagro deal. So in the valuation summary, we used weighting of 3 main methods that were used: DCF, comparable companies, and precedent transactions. Trading multiples and precedent transaction valuation proved DCF valuation results, what ensures us in the validity of the offer price. And so the final valuation result is $1.7 billion for 100% stake in a company, what equals to $13 per share. So that's it. Now we're ready to answer for all your questions.
Given that you are advisors to Wilmar, did you make an analysis of other alternative opportunities like other countries? Why Russia and why Rusagro? So comparing to anything else they can do around the world.
Okay, so as we already mentioned, the Russian market is quite perspective for Wilmar because it's one of the biggest agricultural countries, the biggest in Eastern Europe, and Wilmar was historically developing its agricultural assets in Russia. So why Rusagro? Because Wilmar is a big company, it's a huge company, it's in the middle of Fortune 500 ranking. So, and there are only 2 big public agricultural companies in Russia. It's Cherkizova and Rusagro, and we see much more synergies and much more strategic rationale in acquiring Rusagro because, as we mentioned, Rusagro have sugar plants. It have land bank that is harvested with sugar and oils, and it can help Wilmar to diversify its land bank and to complete their vertical integration. So that's why.
Given that the Russian business of Wilmar is minor in terms of market cap, why not expand the business in Indonesia or any other company which is also is famous for agriculture or whatever? So what's the reason for Russia again?
So yeah, as you can see here,
in terms of figures, or I mean, can you give any reason why? I mean, solid reason.
Okay, so first of all, you were talking about Indonesia and Malaysia, like southeastern Asian countries, and here In the left corner, you can see oil plantations geographic structure, and you can see that now all the oil plantations are situated in, particularly all plantations are situated in one region in Southeastern Asia. And if Wilmer really wants to be completely vertically integrated and diversified, and to manage risk with the weather and climate conditions, it should acquire some assets, some land bank assets in other countries, and Russia is a good choice for that, I guess. And moreover, so there is a huge potential of developing business exactly in Russia, because here on the slide you can see that margarine and mayonnaise production was quite stable for the past 5 years, and Wilmer, in all its annual reports, states that these are the main markets for Wilmer in Russia, and Rusagro is a perfect target to gain some growth on this market, because organic growth is kind of hard to gain in this market situation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and in terms of valuation, what would be the effect of this deal for Wilmer? So what will actually happen? So what might be the main target for them to acquire the Rusagro?
So yeah, the deal will be EPS accretive for Wilmer, and it will be like significantly EPS accretive. Here you can see like around 30% on average. And so trading multiples of Rusagro are quite lower than Wilmer's Rusagro, so we think that it's a good target to acquire for Wilmer.
So do you think they might keep those multiples high after doing this transaction?
So I mean, Wilmer is really like have tremendous size compared to Rusagro, so we don't see some like dramatic change in multiples. So we think that multiples of Wilmer can stay pretty the same. So maybe multiples of Rusagro can go higher because they will be in a group, in a Wilmer international group. So we see only upside potential in terms of multiples.
Thank you.
Thank you. Couple of comments from my side, couple of questions from my side. You have estimated around 32% premium according to your DCF to current market price, and you believe that the median for synergies at a 45% level, median control premium in recent transactions is 45%, while you are offering around 13%. Why such greediness?
Because our goal was to make a fair valuation, and we took all the methods that we used: DCF, trading multiples, and precedent transactions. And like we think that market situation for Rusagro is quite good, because in coronavirus year in 2020, like when many companies were declining, the Rusagro was going up. So the like market valuation for Rusagro is not that bad. That's why the premium is not really high.
Yeah. Do you believe that Rusagro current market value represents its fundamental value, considering its liquidity?
We see like trading, like in terms of market valuation, Rusagro of course is a little bit underestimated. But we see that it's going up to its fair value, so we think. Yeah.
Thank you. Also, I think question: how do you feel about splitting synergies? Do you think you should split synergies in half, or some other option? How will you split synergies, or would you assume that Wilmer should capture all the synergies and not share it with Rusagro shareholders?
So I guess this option of splitting synergies is possible, but we talked to Vadim Mashkovich, and he would like to monetize his investment in Rusagro, and he would like to stop doing some operational things. So in our case, we decided that Wilmar will take all the synergies, because it will be like one more motivation for Wilmar to acquire Rusagro, because synergies are quite strong. And summing up strategic rationale and synergies, Wilmar can do this deal. Yeah.
Why do you think it is fair for Mashkovich? Because if there is no deal, there are no synergies. If there is a deal, there is synergies. Synergies should be split half by half. Why do you think Mr. Mashkovich would agree not to share synergies, not to get its share of synergies?
Yeah, there are several reasons, we think. First of all, one more time, it's a good market situation to sell Rusagro as we see it. So also he's getting 17% premium, that is not so low. And moreover, as I already mentioned, Wilmar's multiples are quite high. So we think that Vadim Mashkovich don't want to take Wilmar stocks and combined company stocks, and he's better to monetize everything right now.
Okay, thank you.
In your forecasts, there is a decline in cash flow operations in 2021 or 2022, as far as I understand. What was the reason for it, and what kind of forecasts for commodity pricing would you use?
Yes, the reason for decline in cash flow from operations is investments in net working capital. Because they are quite volatile and they change year to year, and that's why cash flow from operations were a little bit declining. So talking about prices forecast, we used to take into account cyclicality of agricultural commodities prices. We took average price for the past 4 years, from 2017 to 2020, and then started inflating them. So we took this because in year 2016, the prices were at the top, and they were near to top in year 2020. So that's why we decided that this cycle for the most agricultural commodities is 4 years, and decided to use this approach to price forecasting.
In terms of the forecasts of the costs for production, what influence would the expected growth or decline in fertilizer and crop protection have for the EBITDA margins?
So I'm sorry, you're talking about increase in prices for fertilizers, and
what is the expected influence of the forecasts decline or increase in prices for fertilizers and crop protection? What's going to be the effect for EBITDA?
So yeah, of course, if fertilizers price are going up, it's the cost of goods sold, it's going up too, and EBITDA margin is declining. But the structure of cost of goods sold is quite diversified, and it's not only dependent on fertilizers, so we don't think that it will have a dramatic effect on EBITDA margin.
Would you have some understanding of the pricing in terms of these inputs be available to show?
You mean fertilizers?
Fertilizers, crop protection, labor force, inputs. Do you have
no,
something?
Unfortunately, we used an assumptions that all these prices will go near inflation, so we don't specify the fertilizers or crop protection prices.
I see. In terms of the acquisition by Wilmar, would you consider a risk that Wilmar is a foreign company and then being indirectly of control of one of the largest land banks in Russia would probably stop the regulators from approving this deal?
Yeah, we have one additional slide about federal anti-monopoly services investigation risks. And we think that there are not so many risks of investigation because Rusagro will, yes, it will be one of the leading land bank owners in Russia, but not the biggest. And now it's Rusagro on the fifth place in Russia as a land bank owner. And moreover, we don't see a risk of investigation because of domination on one of the markets, because there are several other strong players in oil and fats market, in oil and fat markets. And we don't see an opportunity that Rusagro and Wilmar combined company in Russia can control prices, because now government is setting like the upper limit for vital products. And we think that it will be no chance that combined company can control prices. And moreover, in such products as margarine, where Rusagro standalone have a big share, and with inside a combined company, the share on margarine market will be even bigger. We don't see risks because Rusagro is exporting more than 70% of margarine. And so the market share is counted by production, but like sales in Russia market share of margarine and other oil and fats products is not so big, because 44% of all oil and fats products were sold to foreign countries in 2020. So that's why we don't think that there will be any problems with federal anti-monopoly service.
Ilya, thank you for this explanation. Where I came from is actually the legislation which effectively forbids the foreigners to own land. It's not about pricing, but effectively, if you're selling the company and that's going to be under control of a foreign company or under significant influence, then it's purely forbidden.
But as far as I know, now many even private agricultural companies are owned by foreigners, and there's no problems that they own land. So
would you name a couple of names of the largest agriculture businesses in Russia owned by foreign companies?
I'm not sure I can name it now.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any more questions? No? Okay, team, thank you. And the last but not the least, you may start preparing your materials.
Good afternoon. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
So I suppose we can start. Good afternoon, everyone. We would like to present strategic investment opportunity for Wilmar International Limited, Team Goodfellas. Here is our presentation plan. And on this slide, you can see the composition of our team. Next.
Executive summary. The main provision of the investment proposal as follows. The market capitalization of the target company was 123 billion ruble. Compound annual growth rate is 15.54%. Based on our analysis, the buyer already has assets in Russia for the production of sunflower oil. Wilmar International is one of the largest Asia agribusiness groups with assets in Russia. We rated synergy at 21.4 billion ruble. And the last, Federal Anti-Monopoly Services approves acquisition of 40% of shares by Wilmar. Brief summary. The seller's condition will be met and the transaction will be result 55.1 billion ruble with a 12% of premium. Deal structure, 30% of cash and 70% of debt. After the deal, Wilmer will become the largest shareholder of Rusagro company. More details in the next slides.
Rusagro, as one of the biggest Russia's agriculture holdings, combines an attractive combination of scale, diversity, and market leadership, which ensure business sustainability over the long term. Rusagro's target markets are largely saturated. Experts provide scope to mitigate imbalances. Besides, we forecast that growing experts would support positive industry revenue and profitability trends. Considering the good future prospects of the company, our team proposed Wilmer to purchase 40% of the share capital. Next. Rusagro has a high, stable financial performance. Over the last 5 years, AgriHolding has been heavily engaged in strategic development projects in sugar, meat, and oil and fats. 2020 and 2021 should be the last 2 years of so high annual capex, as several projects have been already completed or are approaching completion. Meanwhile, Rusagro can handle its debt. Next.
Rusagro has 5 segments. Oil and fat segment is the largest segment in terms of revenue. It's one of the leader in Russian market. As you can see in 2019, it was a significant growth in production due to intensive expansion of the segment. Rusagro plans to change the structure of product mix in favor of more profitable goods. Also, it will focus on new digital transformation that will help to increase bottom line. Next. As for sugar segment, it's the 3rd largest sugar producer in Russia with 12% market share. Sales volume heavily depend on the harvest of sugar beet. The main challenge in 2021 is the state regulation of prices, and the main goal is to improve efficiency with cutting losses and costs. As for meat segment, it's the 4th largest producer in Russia. Sales volume has been increasing with downward trend in prices of live pigs. The main goal for the segment is to increase production of pigs in live weight. And also in 2021-2023, Rusagro will reach full capacity of its previous projects. Next. As for agriculture segment, Rusagro is one of the biggest farmland owners in Russia. It mainly sells sugar beet in 2020, and in 2021 it's planning to open a bank land in Saratov. Dairy segment is relatively new. It was launched in 2018. Dairy market is low concentrated. 5 liters take only 20% of the market. In the future, Rusagro will concentrate on more profitable product mix, and in 2021 it's planning to incorporate this segment into oil and fats. Next.
Let's move on to the valuation. We derived our target price for Rusagro using a DCF valuation and peer group multiples. Our DCF-based approach indicates $14.9 fair value for one Rusagro share. For the multiples valuation, we identified 26 peers operating all over the world, with 20 of them specializing in only one of the 5 segments. Next. Here you can see the detailed results of our DCF valuation. In the course of the assessment, we obtained a cost of equity equal to 12.6% and a cost of debt equal to 5.3%. Rusagro's beta was counted through peers. Next.
In order to obtain fair value, we used mainly DCF and comparable companies analysis with a different level of relevance. Based on DCF analysis, current equity value is close to median number. Based on comparable analysis, we can see the multiple range is quite varied due to the fact there are few agro holdings that operate in 5 segments simultaneously. In comparison with emerging market, current equity stake is close to median numbers. In comparison with developed market, based on EV to sales, equity value is close to 75th percentile. Based on EV to EBITDA, Rusagro is underestimated. The derived implied value of equity stake is $62 billion. We consider our offer price is reasonable based on the applied methodology. Next.
Wilmer International Limited is Asia's leading agribusiness group. It's a global leader in processing and merchandising of edible oils, oilseed crush and sugar merchandising, and milling and refining. At the core of Wilmer's strategy is an integrated agribusiness model that encompasses the entire value chain of the agricultural commodity business. It's supplier number 1 at Chinese market. Company has over 1,000 manufacturing plants and extensive distribution network covering China, India, Indonesia, and some 50 other countries and regions. Next.
Deal rationale, apart from the synergies to be achieved from this deal, there are some other strategic synergy to be achieved. Firstly, by acquiring stakes in Rusagro, Wilmer will increase its access to Russian sunflower oil production from 6% to 18%, which is equivalent of 5% of the global sunflower oil production. And this will permit Wilmar to have a stronger market position. And secondly, for the past few years, Wilmar has been planning to invest in the Russia Far East soybean production with the intention to export the soybeans to China. Currently, Rusagro holds the license to export soybeans to China from the Far East region. By acquiring stakes in Rusagro, Wilmar will be able to speed up its plans and evaluate investment risks in more detail. Thus, Wilmar will reduce investment risk, cost, and time for this plan. Synergies to be achieved from the deal. We have estimated two main segments that will give us synergies from this deal, namely oil and fat and sugars. Firstly, logistics synergies will be achieved by rerouting the unrefined oil supplies to Yekaterinburg and Nizhny Novgorod oil refining plants, resulting a 2.3 billion ruble in synergies. Secondly, by introducing new technology and production management, we estimate that 250 personnel can be reduced in Rusagro and in Wilmar, thus providing a 1.8 billion in synergies. And thirdly, we estimate that by the shared use of equipment and infrastructures, there can be a 5% reduction in the costs of oil and fats segment, and thus we will have a 7 billion synergy from this. And fourthly, Rusagro has stated its plan to expand its Chinese market sales under its own brand. In order to enter the market, Rusagro is using the price discount strategy and actively campaigns its own brand. And we estimate that after the deal, these price discounts and campaigning costs can be saved, can be avoided. And thus we will have a 7.1 billion synergies. And lastly, it is possible that we estimate that Wilmar will be able to introduce its raw material procurement, contract management method, and new technologies to help with the cost controlling in the sugar segment. And thus we will have improvement in the costs of the sugar segment and giving us an additional 3.2 billion in synergies. The deal structure. As mentioned by my colleagues, after the consultation with anti-monopoly agency in Russia, we have obtained a green light for 40% stake acquisition for Wilmar in Rusagro. Thus, we propose Wilmar to conduct the acquisition of 40% through the MTO process, and at a price of 1,157, which is at a 12% premium to the current market price. The deal value is estimated at 50.55 billion rubles. We estimate that 8 out of 20% free flow shareholders will participate in the MTO process as they are active investors, and by selling their shares at the purchase price at the premium, they will be able to profit and they will participate in the MTO process. Thus, it is to our estimation that after this deal, Wilmar will have 40% share in the company, and it will be the largest shareholders of the company. And thank you very much. We are happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
A question from me. What is the reason for Wilmar to buy a non-controlling stake in this deal?
Firstly, Wilmar, there's a synergy to be achieved by Wilmar has an operation in Russia. By acquiring this deal, these stakes in the Rusagro, it will achieve some synergies. And secondly, it will be able to implement its investment plan in the soybean production in Far East region, which has been difficult for them to implement in the past 3 years.
No, you didn't get the question. Why buy 40% instead of buying 75 or 100%. So as per your donut, shareholder donut, that would be 40% for Wilmar, around 40 for Mashkovich, and the rest free float and all others. What's the reason for that?
As Wilmar operates all around the world, it's not to their interest to have a majority share in every company in their group. Thus, they will need the help of the management, which is them and the Mashkovich family, to have the Rusagro group operating well after the acquisition.
Mm-hmm. So you expect that the management quality would be satisfactory to Wilmar, and they would be happy with this deal? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. One question from my side. How do you believe these two companies will split synergies, considering that Wilmar doesn't have control in Rusagro and it has own JV operations in Russia?
We estimate that about 25% of the SMS synergy will go to Wilmar, and 75% of the synergy will go to Rusagro.
How did you come up with these numbers?
First, the synergies to be enjoyed by Wilmar are as follows. First, there's the logistics improvement, headcount reduction, and economy of scale. These are the parts which Wilmar will be able to have a share in. And as for the synergy from the channel, S&A cost and improvement in sugar segment, these are the segment that cannot be enjoyed by Wilmar.
So you split the synergies by the way of origination. Yes. On the side which synergies originated, you're okay. Don't you believe that there will be no synergies if there is no deal? And Mashkovich and Wilmar have the right to claim 50% of the synergies. Because there is no deal, there is no synergies. There is a deal, there is synergies of 21.4 billion present value. Why Wilmar should give up 25% of the synergies away?
I understand your question. The thing is that Wilmar's operation is half the size of the oil and fats operations of Rusagro, so it will not be possible for them to claim 4.5 of the synergies, because these come from cost reductions, and if the operation size is limited compared to the operation size of Rusagro, so that would be not feasible in real life for them to have such claim.
Thank you. And also a question: how can you please elaborate how is your deal structured exactly? Do you plan to go with just acquiring Mashkovich's stake and then going through MTO, or do you plan to do voluntary tender offer?
Yes. I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah. So the process is as follows. So Wilmar is given green light to acquire 40% stake, and in this MTO process, the Mashkovich family will participate with 40% stake in the company, and we expect that some of the free float shareholders will also participate in the MTO process, and the actual stake that is acquired from Mashkovich family will be less than 40% after the allocation of the shares in the MTO process.
So you assume some kind of proportionate participation of, okay. I think that's it for me.
You mentioned here as one of the risks, management disintegration. Whether there will be any foreseen effect for the for the deal? Anything in numbers?
We don't have anything in concrete numbers, but the risk of management discretion is possible because Wilmar does not have experience in other segments of Rusagro in Russia. Thus, the management will have a higher, how should I put it, say in the management of the company. And if Wilmar does not agree to them, they can easily leave the company, and this will cause some real problem for the Rusagro after the deal.
In your estimates of value via DCF, what do you believe is the good source for cost components forecasts, and what do you believe is good source for forecasting commodity prices?
Yes, prices for commodities in different segments were predicted in different ways. The price dynamics for some products from the agriculture segment was adjusted through the Bloomberg commodity price forecast function. And in other cases, we made assumptions based on analyst reports, as well as on the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations report. Prices for some products from the dairy segments, as well as for the sugar bit, were adjusted for inflation. So as the costs, they will grow, and we forecasted costs also through inflation in different segments.
In your forecast, you merely show flat EBIT. Would this imply that there is no changes to the industry indicators is expected? Why would it stay almost flat?
Well, it's basically the result of the decrease in margin in meat and sugar segment, as the prices are going to fall for this period.
Yes, several segments, several prices in segments are very influenced, like seasonally, and by 2021 and 2024, there is there is a reduction in prices, and then prices again will grow by 2025. That is why the dynamic is so flat, because this seasonally assumption is make it more flat.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Окей. Давайте тогда перейду на русский. Ребята, всем спасибо за выступление. Сейчас я отправлю судей в виртуальную комнату для того, чтобы они могли посовещаться по поводу результатов. Я думаю, что это займет минут 15-20 максимум. Вас также отправлю в отдельную комнату, потом мы все соберемся опять вместе, и судьи объявят результаты.
Всем презентующим спасибо большое.
Спасибо.
Спасибо, ребята, вы большие молодцы.
Все.
Кажется, мы все вернулись. Давайте еще 1 минута и начнем. Итак, все студенты вернулись. Передаю слово нашим судьям.
Друзья, спасибо вам большое за ваше выступление. Мы посовещались, и своеобразный белый дым над собором Святого Петра пошел. Победитель выбран. И я рад объявить вам результаты. Единогласно решением судей победа присуждается команде номер 3. Ребята большие молодцы, хороший результат с точки зрения рационали сделки, логики презентации, качества Q&A, ну и, соответственно, в целом выглядело это очень здорово. От себя могу добавить, что, ну, дай бог, такая сделка состоится. Она была, наверное, знаковой для российского M&A рынка, вот, поэтому дай бог, что вашими руками эта сделка, может быть, будет реализована, вот, поэтому успехов вам и вашим оппонентам во всех начинаниях, вот, и как совет, наверное, с моей стороны, всегда важно понимать, как бы, задавать себе вопрос, зачем, да, зачем ты это делаешь, зачем та или иная сделка существует, и тогда как бы вот в этих всех ваших презентациях, питчах в дальнейшем вас ждет исключительно успех, и эти сделки действительно состоятся. Видно, что вы все проделали много работы, это очень ценно, очень важно, цифры очень здорово, но как бы зачастую всегда надо знать, что рациональ – это самое важное, наверное, в любой сделке, в любом проекте. То есть вопрос «зачем» всегда должен быть в ваших головах. Это, наверное, там аксиома, которой следовал бы я на вашем месте. Поэтому, наверное, так. Коллеги, может, тоже поделиться своими впечатлениями, рекомендациями.
Да, конечно. Ребята, все большие молодцы. Действительно, все презентации понравились. Вы сделали действительно большой объем работы и приготовили материал достойный того, чтобы быть в инвестбанковском, на инвестбанковском хорошем уровне, сделали материалы. Поэтому те, кто победители, большие молодцы, те, кто не дошел до этого финала или проиграл в финале, все равно большие молодцы. Я думаю, у вас всех большие карьеры впереди, и вы добьетесь всего многого. Видно, что вы все умные ребята и молодцы. Со своей стороны, наверное, хотел бы добавить один из ключевых моментов, наверное, на которые вам следует всегда думать, когда вы делаете такие питчи. Постарайтесь принять обе стороны. То есть посмотреть с одной стороны на сделку, посмотреть с другой стороны на сделку. Если действительно эта сделка работает с обоих сторон, это действительно будет хорошая сделка. Поэтому, наверное, когда мы определяли критерии, мы учитывали, как правильно сказал Леша, все стороны этой сделки, делали рационал, ваши Q&A, и постарались выбрать победителя на этой основе. Спасибо. Спасибо большое за презентацию. Молодцы.
Спасибо всем. Я добавлю немножко критических моментов. Я выделил для себя 3 сферы тех вещей, которые, мне кажется, на будущее в подобных презентациях можете учесть. Они касаются самой сделки, они касаются отрасли, и они касаются некой техники. Первое, когда мы говорим о самой сделке, то действительно тут уже подчеркивалось, и верно подчеркивалось, что вы смотрите на то, какие преимущества этой сделки имеют обе стороны. И это, пожалуй, было тем, что вы могли бы в своих презентациях пояснить очевидным образом, сделать более понятным, и взгляд на сделку с 2 сторон мог быть представлен в цифрах. Вторая тема – это отрасль. Понятно, что сельское хозяйство, особенно для такой большой компании, настолько диверсифицированной, как Русагро, это емкая работа по анализу, но, похоже, всегда есть задел для совершенствования, и то, каким образом вы учли отрасль в DCF-ах, то, каким образом вы прогнозировали те или иные показатели, пожалуй, в лучшей степени должно отражать именно отраслевые тенденции, чем сугубо тенденции самой компании. Не очень важная компания в отличной отрасли имеет больше шансов для инвестиционного успеха, чем шикарная компания в отрасли, которая едва ли способна выжить. Тут как бы отрасль главенствует. Ну и третья тема – это презентация. У вас есть множество теперь наблюдений, вы сможете посмотреть за собой со стороны и понаблюдать, как презентовать в командах. Местами это были моновыступления, местами это были такие выступления, когда вы могли прослушать вопрос, но используйте эту возможность такого тестового задания, то, которое еще не имеет последствий для вас в реальной жизни, используйте эту возможность как способ понаблюдать за тем, как вы презентуете, как именно вы доносите сообщения. В целом вы уже продвинулись достаточно высоко в подготовке, в ранге подготовки этой презентации. У вас уже есть хорошие успехи, и думаю, что для себя вы уже сможете сделать выбор, насколько интересна вам эта профессия, насколько интересна тема сделок. И следующим шагом будет выбор некого сегмента. Возможно, сельское хозяйство вас увлечет еще дальше, и вы пойдете в аналитике сельского хозяйства. Так что поздравляю, хорошие презентации, спасибо и успехов дальше.
Ура!
Спасибо нашим судьям за то, что они нашли время и желание принять участие в нашем мероприятии. Спасибо всем участникам этого сезона, которые так долго готовились и так, наверное, сильно сегодня волновались. Вы все большие молодцы, вне зависимости от результатов. Отдельно поздравляем команду победителя. Ребята, вы молодцы. И спасибо всем нашим зрителям, которые нас смотрели онлайн. Я надеюсь, вам понравилось, и в будущем, возможно, вы сможете прийти и посмотреть нас в офлайн-режиме. Вот. Всем большое спасибо. Напоминаю, что вечером мы ждем участников, судей на закрытии сезона. Будем рады всех видеть. Всем пока.
Всего доброго.
Всего доброго.